The Barbarian and the Troll is a comedic puppet television series that began airing on Nickelodeon in April of 2021. Set in the fantasy realm of Gothmoria, The Barbarian and the Troll tells the story of Brendar the Barbarian and Evan the Troll with an all-puppet cast. I talked to the show's co-creator, Drew Massey, and series puppeteers Peggy Etra and Nicolette Santino about the development and production of The Barbarian and the Troll on this episode of Under the Puppet. You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet. Drew Massey, welcome back to Under the Puppet.
Hey, thanks, Grant.
I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about the show you created, The Barbarian and the Troll. And just in case anyone has been living under a rock or under a bridge, in this show's case, can you tell us a little bit what the show is about as we start?
Sure, yeah. The Barbarian and the Troll is an all-puppet fantasy TV series. It's got comedy and music, and it's wall-to-wall puppets, and it's about a troll who is tasked with making sure people pay a toll as they go over his bridge. He's terrible at it. He's a songwriter. He wants to get out of the family business, which is shaking people down for money. And so he accidentally burns his bridge and goes to an open horn night at a local tavern. And there he meets this fantastic female warrior. And he follows her because he's convinced that she will lead him on many quests, and his life will finally be exciting and cool, and he'll finally have something great to write songs about. And this comes to pass.
Excellent. Where did the idea for this show come from?
So Mike Mitchell, my co-creator on this show, and I had been in contact for many, many years on various different puppet projects, and we liked working with each other. And at some point in, I think it was 2018, we got together for lunch and finally decided, like, hey, let's do a puppet show together. And we sort of batted around a couple ideas, and Mike was like, how about fantasy? And I was like, yeah. And we figured out that, I don't know if we knew this about each other at the time, but we were both big fantasy nerds and had seen all the great fantasy movies in the 80s, you know, Krull and Dragon Slayer and all that. It was a big renaissance at that point. And so we were like, yeah, let's do an all-puppet fantasy show, because it's never really been done before in a comedy way. You know, things have been done with people and puppets, or with really creature-y puppets. You know, Dark Crystal's amazing,
right,
but it's not a comedy. So we were like, yeah, what if we did that and made it funny and musical and puppety and stupid, and that's what we set out to do.
Yeah, I think that fantasy kind of lends itself to puppets just because there are so many creatures. You know, it's a little bit like space as well, kind of lends itself to it.
Definitely, yeah. And that was a thing of mine for many years, and hopefully the next thing we do will be in this sci-fi realm, because I was always struck watching movies, like, there are really good puppets and people, but the puppet creatures always kind of stand out. But if everything's a puppet, right, then everything kind of blends aesthetically, and that's, you know, we both kind of set out to do that. And you're exactly right. You can make anybody look weird or anything come alive, and it's a natural part of the puppet world.
Yeah. How long did the process take from having this idea that you were going to do this show to pitching the show?
We worked on it for a good, 2 years, mostly because Mike was busy directing Lego Movie Part 2. So he had limited time, so we would get together infrequently. And in the meantime, when we weren't together, we would send emails back and forth, and we'd write stuff and send a script back and forth. And that really was instrumental in selling the show, is the fact that we had written a pilot script that then we could give to the execs and they could read it, and it was good. You know, it was good and funny, and we gave it to all our friends to read too, so they had input, and we really tried to finesse it to the point that it was sellable. But yeah, it was good, 2 years.
And when you mentioned the pilot script, when you went in for pitch sessions, was it the pilot script and like, did you have a Bible or did you have images?
Yeah, we had a little Bible. We had some images. Mike did some great pre-viz character design kind of things. I had some designs. I actually built a rudimentary Evan puppet, which wasn't great, but but I think it all helped. We came in with a lot of material.
Did you bring the puppet into the pitch? Because I've heard mixed things about bringing a puppet into the pitch.
We did. We actually brought it in at one point, and then I think didn't use it. So yeah, you gotta be prepared, but read the room. Right. Is always my advice. So, I mean, I don't think we needed it. I don't think it did much. It was really based on the script and just the Bible and the strength of the material itself.
Yeah. Now, the show wound up on Nickelodeon, but did you pitch it elsewhere besides Nickelodeon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we pitched a couple other places, but we were really specifically looking for some place that would produce it themselves. And that was really the deal breaker for, not the deal breaker, that was the deal solidifier for us, is when Nickelodeon came back and said, let's do it. And we're like, great. Are you taking it anywhere else? Because sometimes they'll say, let's do it. We'll take it over to Netflix and see if they bite. Or, it's sometimes they're a middleman, but they're like, nope, we're going to produce it. We're going to air it on our network, and we're all in. So that sold us on going with them.
Excellent. Can you, because I always see this podcast as something that aspiring puppeteers or creators can kind of learn from. Could you walk us through like a sample pitch session for the Barbarian and the Troll? Like, you go in and you just show them the materials, or do you talk about the show, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, initially we pitched to Ramsey Naito over at Nickelodeon, and it was interesting because a lot of times puppet projects specifically, people won't quite know what to do with, because they're like, well, is it animation? Is it live action? Clearly, I mean, it's live action, but Ramsey is in animation, so we pitched it to her. Luckily, I mean, she loved it, and then said, okay, well, I'm animation. You should talk to Shauna over in our live action department. And so we actually had several pitch meetings before they said yes. It was first Ramsey, then Shauna. Then we pitched to Brian Robbins, who was the head of the network at the time.
Excellent. And that's just meeting with them, showing them the materials,
yeah,
talking to them. Yeah.
So walking through a pitch, like it changes every time, which is why I love pitching. Anytime anybody wants me to help with a pitch, I'm in, because it's always fun to go in and get experience reading the room. Like, is the pitch being well received? Should you move on? How quick or slow should you do certain parts? Ramsey was so receptive. It was a pretty easy pitch. I think she was a fan of Mike's work before, and she had seen some of my stuff, and really liked it. So we got lucky. She was a real champion of the show, kind of from the get-go, which was really nice, because I think she talked it up to Shauna, which gave Shauna, I mean, she was probably already confident in it anyway, but then she, said good things about it to Brian. So by the time we got to Brian, we had built good buzz, yeah. as it were. And Brian read our script, which I think was instrumental in getting it sold too, because he purportedly really liked the script. So,
how many to write that pilot script? How many revisions did you go through?
Oh, tons and tons of revisions. Like, that was a good portion of those 2 years we spent, figuring out what we wanted. And by the time we quote unquote finished it and gave it to Brian, like, it was bloated. It was so it was way more than the 22 to 24 pages you're supposed to have. It was easily twice that long. So we're like, well, we know it's a lot, but it's, a sprawling fantasy world. So, and it was a testament, I think, to the world that we built, that people had the patience to slog through that 48-page script that we gave them. So,
yeah.
But it was, there was a lot of revisions and rewrites and adding jokes and, taking jokes out and putting other stuff in. And yeah, it was a long process, but really worthwhile.
Yeah. What would you say was the biggest change from your initial pitch to what we saw on the screen on the series? Was there anything like, yeah, we had to lose that or we had to change that?
That's a really good question, and fortunately, nothing really got left by the wayside. Things did change. Initially, Stacy, I believe, was named Linda, and she was Horace's wife, not his daughter. So that's probably the biggest change, because Stacy's one of our main cast members, and eventually it became a father-daughter story. And a lot of the execs there at Nickelodeon really know storycraft and really helped to shape the story into something that was more kid relatable and fun. So yeah, we got really lucky in a lot of ways, because we didn't feel anybody at Nickelodeon was just giving a note to give a note. It was always geared towards story and focusing it towards their audience.
Yeah.
So, but that's probably the biggest change.
Right. Well, one thing I love about the show is that, as far as I can tell, you used physical sets. You were on sound stages and stuff like that, and then you even shot outside for forest scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Was there ever any consideration of using sort of green screen or digital sets, or were you determined to use real sets for this?
We really, from the get-go, wanted to take puppets into a forest and shoot in real environments, just because we thought that would be super fun. Because we'd seen everything else, and I don't know, there's always some sort of lack of something. You can always kind of tell. I mean, it's getting harder and harder now, but that's something we really wanted to do. Just be in and among the trees, and it's always fun too, because you find little nooks and crannies and crevices that you can hide a body in and goof around with and poke out of, and if you're in a real forest. It's messy and expensive to do it that way.
Yeah.
We found out. Because of budgetary considerations, we had to move the production to Vancouver, and we really wanted a good half of it to be out in the forest, and they're like, you get 7 days, and I think we ended up only maybe using 5 of the 7, because it's a massive expense to move the entire production out to the forest, get them food and set up the porta potties and all that crazy stuff. And even though they have a ton of stuff in Vancouver, it was still really expensive, and turns out super cold. We I was really close to getting frostbite one of the days, so I was actually really happy to move out of real environments at one point.
I think, though, that when you see a puppet out in the real world, that's not obviously on a sound, even away from a soundstage, but out in the environment, it's really engaging. It's just, there's something about it wow, he's outside, Yeah. So I think it's great that you did that, even if it was only for 5 days.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I think we got a lot out of what we had. We made the most of our shoot days out in the forest. The whole bat sequence was out in the forest, and we had Peggy and James, who played the bats. You'll hear from Peggy in a bit. They were just stuffed in old stumps, performing. Anyway, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
for me to watch, because I didn't do it. I just watched them suffer. It was great.
Right, with a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Watching on the monitor.
Yeah.
Now, you created the show, you were a producer, you're a writer, you played Evan the Troll, among other things. How did you juggle all that responsibility during production?
I drank a lot of coffee. I didn't sleep. And the other thing, too, was I brought my son up with me. So, what really blew was that because of COVID, he couldn't visit the set. Not once. Came up with me, hung out in Vancouver, had a great time, but he couldn't visit the set, which kind of sucked. It was tough. I kind of had to hit the ground running and not look back and not stop. And that's what I signed up for. That's what I was totally into. And I found that I love being that busy with creative stuff.
Right.
And aside from all of that stuff I was doing, I was also making props and designing puppets and designing other stuff. And so was Mike. We were both ridiculously busy. But I feel like that's kind of my default state. I would love to be doing that all the time.
Right.
I think I joked at the time, it's like, wow, it's like I'm a thoroughbred horse and I'm finally being let out on the track.
Right.
So, it was weird. I found it strangely energizing. I mean, I guess I was just living up to, like, the best compliment I think I've ever received from a friend. It was from Hopper Stone, who was the set photographer on Happy Time Murders. And we had lunch one time, and he's like, "You're what I would describe as aggressively creative." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." But that's, I used that and just, like, aggressively created stuff for however many months it took.
Yeah, I remember I was working on a project with somebody, and Seth MacFarlane came up, a creator of Family Guy, but he's also a writer on it and a producer of it, and then does a ton of the voices.
Yep.
And the person who I was working with was like, "Oh my God, I couldn't, like, that just seems like a nightmare for me." And for me, I'm like, "No, that would be awesome. I would love it." So
yeah.
It seems like that same kind of thing.
Yeah, it is. It's really surprising. Like, the more you do, the less time you have to concentrate on how tired you are. So you just, I don't know. It's a strange thing. I don't know that I could sustain it for years and years, but maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I'd love to be put to that test.
Love to try.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear that, studios? Drew is ready to go.
That's right.
So let's talk about the puppets for the show. You mentioned that you and Mike both designed them, but who built the puppets for the show?
So we had a great building team in Los Angeles. So they would make all this amazing stuff and then send it up north, and it'd be like Christmas every time they'd send a box. I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome." But we had, on the pilot, we had Scott Johnson heading up with Jurgen Ferguson as a second, and then a team of, for the show, Scott had to do a different project, and so Jurgen took over as number one, and then Russ Walco was his second. And then we had Carol Binion doing costumes. We had Rachel Burson. We had Gabby Padilla. We had, who am I forgetting? I know I'm forgetting people. Christine Papalexis did some work. We had a whole crew of great, super talented people.
Yeah.
Dan Ray, I think, did some stuff.
Did Gordon Smuter do?
Yes, Gordon, right. We got Gordon to build 3 of our blanks who turned into Agnes the Witch and the Viking and I forget what they called him. He had some weird name on the puppet list, but he was that sort of greenish guy who wanders through the tavern and delivers flyers looking for acts.
Excellent. Yeah, well, the puppets are just beautiful. And so, like, not different style, but just different shapes, and, like, it's just really great. It really has sort of that, I mean, we're not comparing it to the Muppet Show because it's a different show, but just like when you watch the Muppet Show and there's big ones and little ones and tiny ones, and it's a lot of fun.
Thanks. Yeah, we tried to get a whole sense of scale in there and do things that were very, we grew up on the Muppet Show, so we definitely wanted to evoke that kind of tone of silliness and mayhem and great design all at the same time. I mean, the Muppet Show was just fantastic eye candy, so we really wanted to do kind of a similar thing. But there's also the problem of, like, overthinking it, making things too beautiful, and we were really trying to get things to a point where they look professional but not, like, overthought, because I think sometimes things can turn out overbaked, so we wanted things to be slightly rough around the edges. I always loved about craft stuff, as a kid, I'd watch it and I'd be like, that is so amazing and so cool. And there's just enough roughness around the edges that I feel like if I had enough time in my own room or workshop, I could do something like that. So it was really inspirational.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, it was just to the point of being unattainably awesome, but it was attainably awesome. That's what we sort of aimed for.
Yeah.
And it was funny because even with arm rods, Mike and I were like, so we want this kind of little bit grungy aesthetic. And the Nick execs at one point decided to remove all the arm rods. And they came to Mike and they're like, okay. They were all nervous. So they're like, I know you and Mike really like I know you and Drew, they said this to Mike, I know you and Drew really like the arm rods, but we're thinking of taking them away. And he's like, great. I'm like, what, really? We thought you He's like, no, we don't mind them. Like, you can take them out. That's fine.
Awesome. Well, as a puppeteer who goes on auditions, how do you make your auditions for your projects different from regular puppet auditions, or are they not different? Are they exactly the same? But I just figure as a puppeteer running auditions, it might be a little different.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the differences is that I know everybody coming in already.
Yeah.
I mean, that's different. And I already have a sense of people's skill sets, and so I can direct them towards, honing what they do specifically to the audition. Because I feel like I generally know people well enough to bring out what I think will fit the character most so that they can have their best audition. Because some people are not great auditioners, and you just cast them and you know they're going to be great, and they are. And so, honestly, if I had my druthers, I'd be just like, you, and I already cast it. But it's good to see everybody and what they can do, and some things were a surprise to me. So it's not, I don't know everything, obviously, but it's different also in that we provide a puppet, we provide a monitor setup, we make sure that all of that's taken care of so that the puppeteers feel hopefully really comfortable when they come in and they don't have to do a lot of extra asking for things. And hopefully it's all set up well enough that they're like, okay, they saw my best work.
Yeah. Well, and it's also from an auditioning standpoint, it's also nice to walk in the room and like, oh, hey, Drew, I know you. It's not like this room of strangers who you've never met. So from the other end, it's nice. Well, we recently had Colleen Smith on the show who played Brendar. Can you talk about casting her in the lead role and why you thought she was the perfect fit for that role?
Yeah, she's got a stoic strength that just lent itself to that character. I mean, and she's really funny. Like, we wanted to make sure that everybody cast was not just skilled in puppetry, but also really funny. And I think that even though her voice was replaced, I think that still comes across, because her comic timing couldn't be messed with, except maybe in the edit. But generally, like, her comic timing is impeccable, and yeah, she killed it. Like, we wanted her from the get-go as Brendar.
Yeah. And it seems she's, because we've both worked with her a lot in Puppet Up, but she's also kind of a leader. Maybe she doesn't necessarily consider herself a leader. I mean, she might.
She does.
She does. But she's also, and we talked about this on her podcast, where she just has a great thing where if something isn't working, she's not just going to stick with it and try and make it work. She's going to pipe up and say, look, this isn't working. We're going to have to find a different way to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, and she and the rest of the cast were instrumental in fixing certain things in scripts later down the road and doing logic checks and, hey, would my character do this? And it was, she was instrumental in making sure that Brendar's character was really consistent. And she's definitely a leader. I mean, when she says, we're going this way, you just want to follow. So it really, the personality really comes through when she's performing. So
yeah. Well, one thing I don't think gets talked about enough in sort of write-ups about Barbarian and the Troll is that the majority of the puppeteering team were female puppeteers.
Yep.
And it was really groundbreaking that, because I can't think of another production, that did that. So talk about that and about assembling that great team of puppeteers.
Thanks. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because that was one thing that we aimed for. Because generally, you write male characters and think kind of nothing of it, and then this was really great to have a majority of female puppeteers. You're like, this is great, let's write female characters for our performers, and that way we make sure it's diverse and we can really get like a lot of different voices in, and like some of these sort of genderless roles are really fun to play with, because I know, people like women have really great voice, like Peggy, for instance, getting her to do the evil tree. I was like, oh, your gruff voice is fantastic. This is going to be amazing, because nobody's heard anything like it. And she, auditioned for it and did it, and we were like, yes, that is just so weird. It's perfect. I really feel like for so many years, women puppeteers' skills have not been tapped like they should. So I really wanted to make sure that we got them in there and working and doing awesome stuff where people could see it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's really great, and I hope people check it out because it's just an awesome team that you assembled of puppeteers, and all of them A-level puppeteers as well.
They're amazing. They're funny. They're super skilled. They're amazing people. Yeah, all of them.
Well, let's bring a couple of those puppeteers onto the show. Well, I'm super excited to welcome on the show two of the puppeteers from The Barbarian and the Troll, Nicolette Santino and Peggy Etra. Welcome to Under the Puppet.
Yay, thanks for having us.
Of course, I'm very excited. I would love to know from both of you, just tell us about auditioning for the show and sort of what your audition process was.
Well, I was super excited and happy to be asked, and we were asked, I was asked to prepare Stacy, and then I was also going to, which was a trigger style puppet, and then I would be doing like a bar patron, which is like more of a rodded puppet, and it went well. But my favorite part was, for some reason that day, my hands were ice, that I could not warm my hands up. I just couldn't. I was in the green room, like waiting to go in, trying to warm my hands up. I just couldn't. Doesn't matter. I get called in the room, and Drew is there, and I was like so excited to see Drew, and he jumps up, gives me a hug, and introduces me to Mike Mitchell, who I'd never met before. And Mike extends his hand because he's a gentleman, and we make eye contact. He shakes my hand. He never breaks eye contact with me, and the handshake stops. And I'm just looking at him. I go, I have to talk about the elephant in the room. My hands are freezing. And he's like, I didn't want to say anything, but what is happening? Because he was so kind that he didn't like recoil from me. And I thought, oh, what a nice man. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I have to at least acknowledge it. And then I did my audition. But that was like the icebreaker, and he was so lovely. And so now we become friends, but he's still, it's like, what was going on there? It's like, I have no clue.
He's such a warm person.
He's such a, that's what it is. Yeah. But it was one of the first times in an audition I felt comfortable enough to just be myself and to just go, I have to just say what's happening, because otherwise he's going to think I'm a corpse from there.
Yeah, we're shooting in Canada. She's not going to...
She'll
be fine.
For me, when Colleen was cast, that was during Earth to Ned, right? Or before it?
I mean, yeah, we knew we wanted her, so yeah.
So I guess I was working on Earth to Ned, and I was assisting Michael Ostrom on Cornelius. And I guess Michael Ostrom was singing my praises to Colleen about how good of an assist I was, which made me feel super good. But because of that, that's why Colleen wanted me to assist her for Brendar, because she knew she was going to be Brendar at that time. So I went into the audition kind of having a feeling like, okay, Colleen wants me to be her assist, but let me see what else I can do. And so I went in and I just improvised as a bar patron and played around and tried to make people laugh. And then I was also auditioning as Stacy, as a trigger puppet. So yeah.
And were you nervous at all, or were you like, because you kind of mentioned you were a little confident because Colleen wanted you, but were there still like that audition nerves type of stuff?
Oh, definitely. I don't think I'll ever get those out of my system. But yeah, I went into it, I think, more confident than I usually am in auditions, because I knew that Colleen wanted me to help her out on this project. So that made me feel stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what temperature were your hands?
They were normal.
Well, you both got cast on the show, and the show, as Drew mentioned, was shot in Vancouver. And we'll start with you, Nikki. Was it difficult getting prepared to be away from home for such long stretches of time?
It was totally fine, because this was during COVID time. So I was trapped in the house. This is when I was getting groceries just by picking it up with my car and having them put it in my trunk. I was so careful with COVID. I did not go anywhere. So as soon as I, had this opportunity to leave my apartment, I was like, let's go, guys. And it was perfect because my wonderful friend Stephanie and roommate at the time, was able to watch my cat Walter, and it just worked out. And yeah, so it wasn't difficult, especially during COVID times, for me to hop away and move to Canada for a bit.
Yes, I will leave my house.
Yes.
I left my family.
Yeah.
I didn't think twice. I feel bad now. No, I it's the same sort of thing with it was COVID. There was really no work. Hollywood had shut down,
Right.
and this thought of, oh gosh, there's like, what's going to happen? And then this came up, and it was like, you're going to be in Vancouver. It's like, oh, and we were going to be COVID tested 3 times a week. We had COVID officers on set. It suddenly became. It was so, I felt so safe and protected in what became the vernacular of the world, the bubble. We had our bubble. And that we really took it to heart. Nobody acted irresponsibly, and we could, we're all in the same hotel as well as on sets, but we could then socialize and not wear masks. On a Saturday night, we would all gather. It became sort of a tradition that we would have a meal and we'd all be together, even though we had just been together for a week. And so it actually, we got to sort of have a respite. In the midst of COVID, we got a respite from all of the pressures of COVID.
Yeah.
We would get together once a week on Saturdays and have a little party in the hotel in one of our rooms, and it was like going back in time. It was so neat and special, and
we became. It just sounds so, I don't know, saccharine, but it's not. We became family.
Yeah.
We love each other. And one thing I want to bring up is that Barbarian and the Troll, the entire cast of Barbarian and the Troll is 8 people. It's 8 people. We assisted each other. It was astonishing to me because there were the other 7 Americans, and we had Jenny, who was our Canadian puppeteer, but we just, it was like going to camp. We got to do wonderful things and stretch ourselves and stretch our imaginations, but then hang out with everybody. And the fact that we still wanted to see each other on our days off tells you how much fun it was, and how much work, but how much fun.
Yeah. It was great. Yeah, and when you say like the majority of the cast were women, it was literally 5 women and 3 men. And when we walked onto the stage for the first time, I was like, okay, this is it. The 8 of us are every living man, woman, child, plant, creature in Gothmoria. So make it good.
It's true. And it was, I was laughing, Drew, when you were talking about shooting outside, because my first shot was in a green suit inside a tree with James Murray in a green suit further inside the tree. And we're laying down with our 2 bats, and Alan was laying in front of us as Skelly, and then there was like, can you get a little lower? And James is like, Peggy, there's nowhere to go. And I'm like, I'm going to scooch down a little more. It's like, here we go.
The wonderful, awkward world of puppetry.
Yeah, we have no personal space issues.
Yeah. Professionally.
Well, one thing I know for sure about working on this project, and that's because I follow you on Instagram, was that you all had to quarantine for a period of time before you could even start working. And this is a unique thing, and in these days anyway, as we're recording this in 2021, that seems to be a thing that's still kind of continuing, even if people are vaccinated and stuff. So can you talk about what that was like and sort of what you did to stay sane during, because it was 2 weeks, right, that you had to be in quarantine? Twice, right.
I had to do it twice. Yeah. Because, and I'll explain why, because we had a Christmas break, and then when we came back, we had to do the second quarantine. So.
Yeah, the Canadian government made you stay indoors for 2 weeks to wait. If you had COVID, you would wait it out. And they put an app on your phone as you entered the country, and they would check. I mean, I guess you could wander around without your phone, but they would check
Yeah.
to see where you were on your phone.
And I think if you broke quarantine, was it like $1 million fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's $1 million Canadian, so,
Yeah.
whatever. But,
$3.
yeah. No, it was they would charge you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, the first go round, I think we were all had some trepidations. We didn't know what. It was like, oh, we're going to be in our hotel rooms for 2 weeks. What are we going to do? We're going to go crazy. But we had Zoom script readings, and then we'd have our 6 o'clock, we called poke. We'd all poke out of our rooms and peek at each other because we were all over the hotel on our balconies and wave at
On the
each
same
other.
side of the hotel, yeah.
Yeah.
So they,
Yeah.
you could see
Like,
each other.
Hi.
And at one point, I drove by in the alley and waved to everybody up in their balconies.
Yeah. Yeah, because you got there earlier than we
Yeah,
had.
I was there, 2 weeks earlier.
And then I will confess the second go round, which was we got back New Year's Day, and I knew that I had 2 weeks quarantine. Oh, it was, I would get up in the morning and have breakfast, maybe read a little bit, watch some TV, binge something, take a nap, I took that 2 weeks like, oh, well, this is my little vacation now.
Me time.
It was great.
And your hotel was
Our hotel was
awesome.
Yeah.
fantastic. We had kitchenettes. We
Yeah.
had laundry in situ. Oh,
It was lush.
And didn't one thing you do, because I just remember seeing this on, maybe it was on Sarah O's Instagram story, was you ordered lunch for each other?
yes.
Yeah, I just thought that was a fun idea of like, you don't know what you're going to get, but we all ordered lunch for each other.
And then we would Zoom. Like, did yours come? Do you like it? And we'd get all so excited. Like, oh, I thought you'd like it.
Yeah.
And we spent Thanksgiving because Canadian Thanksgiving is before ours, so we worked American Thanksgiving proper. But on that Saturday, Thanksgiving's very important to Colleen, by the way. And so that Saturday, we had Thanksgiving with everyone, including Mike was there and our director at the time, Paul Fox. And the hotel room was small. It was lovely, but it was small. And we shoved, I think it was 12 people in that room. We all had, been COVID tested, blah, blah, blah. It was one of the best Thanksgivings I think I've ever had. The food was amazing.
Me too.
By the way, when you're casting a show, cast people who can cook or know how to order really good food. And we just sat there and told stories, and we're really thankful. It was like the reason you have Thanksgiving is to be thankful for those in your life, and it was truly that. It was special.
Well, you both played multiple characters on the show. Can you talk about the challenges of playing multiple characters on a project like this? I know for me, it's like, how do I keep these voices straight? I
Right.
wouldn't even know. So,
Yeah. Well, when I went into the project, and I learned of how many voices I'm going to have to do, I remember turning to Drew and going, Drew, I have some voices up my sleeve, but I don't know if I have 10 voices up my sleeve. This is hard. And sure enough, I was able to surprise myself and come up with completely different characters, completely different voices that didn't sound the same. And it made me feel like, hey, I found out something I can do that I didn't think I could do. And I grew as a puppeteer and an actor because of that. And it
What was
fun.
my answer, by the way, when you said, did I say anything back to you?
Oh, you were probably like, you could do it. You're so supportive and yeah.
I'm just curious. Well, sure enough, you did,
Yeah,
You did.
yeah.
Oh, God. I just remember getting up there and seeing the puppets for the first time. And then, the first or second day, we had to go into a room with Drew and Mike and go, okay, what does this puppet sound like? I'm like, like this? And so, because I think the first couple scripts that I had 3 or 4 characters. So it's like, here they are. And it's like, okay, cool. So I got that. And then it's like, oh, now you've got all these other ones coming. And I went, all right. And then there would be days, and this which was super fun. You'd be sitting in chairs, and Mike could go, Peggy, you're a bar patron in this. Grab one of the puppets and come over. You're here. You're at the table. You're going to say something. Okay, cool. You're going to say this. I ordered chopped salad. Go. And we're set. Go. And you're like, okay. And you just blurted something out, and you went, oh, that was good. And then that character showed up later in the gnome market. I went, oh, they liked her.
Yeah.
And they got to play the henchman at the end.
Yep.
Just
oh my God, it's so
they
funny.
kept Oh my gosh! And then a king. Played King of Nordonico.
That was a fun thing where we just decided to gender swap 2 roles just for the hell of it.
The day before. There's
the day before.
Oh, Drew's gonna do this and you're gonna do that, and I went, all right, I'm gonna go home now and come up with something.
Yeah.
But that idea.
I love you if I was just, do it. It's so good.
Welcome, Queen Brenda. No, that was to your coronation. Ha ha.
Yeah, little laugh. So good.
But that we felt comfortable enough and loved enough and supported enough to try. And sometimes it was like literally with Evil Tree, go deeper. And I'm like, I didn't know I could. So they lovingly stretched all of us into a growth that I think when we all left there, we all felt really accomplished in what we had left for the show, but also that we had grown as puppeteers and as actors and as people.
Right. I just want to emphasize the atmosphere that you and Mike created, and I think what everyone created was so supportive, and we all felt so safe, and we knew that we could make mistakes, try new things, fall first, and then succeed, and everyone's going to still support you. And I think that's what made the show so great, is that we were so trusting of each other, and I think that is the kind of atmosphere that should be strived for on every project.
I think so. I do think so. I think it made us feel a loving ownership of the show, that I like Linda and Michael, who are the 2 skeletons. They started out in Horace's castle. There was a whole bunch of skeletons there, and then it moves forward. But Mike enjoyed like, we're going to put Linda and Michael in this one, or but just have Linda and Michael be in. And it was like, oh, and they grew together. And I was like, this became part of the fabric of the show, and I loved that. I loved, watching the gnomes. Oh my God, the gnome! Nikki and Sarah as those gnomes, T. Winkle and Wee Tinkle. I could just watch that. I could just watch that forever. It just made me so happy.
Me too. I'm really glad you felt that way, because that's really what we tried to do, and. Because we needed everybody to succeed, and figuring out how to get that was key to making the whole thing work.
And I just have to bring this up too, because this is really, I've never had this experience before. Not only did we feel that way as a cast, our crew, to the person, loved us and told us daily how much they enjoyed doing the show. And this is everyone from transpo, craft service, up to the DP, camera operators. Between setups, they would turn, and you'd be standing there, blocking something, and they would just turn going, I love the show so much. I love it so much. I love coming to work. Well, that's a lovely place to work.
Yeah.
And
I miss it.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard work.
Yes,
but
it was
really fun. At
joyous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad.
From the top down. And from the top down, Drew.
Well,
you and Mike from the top down.
Mike and I are both really pretty joyous people. Like we're not yellers. We don't we don't get. We've seen it done wrong, I think, in some places, and then we were pretty dedicated to supporting all of you, and you find out so much great stuff in that process, like happy accidents, and I'm sure that's how it happened on the Muppet Show, with little ancillary characters and people just being supported and playing around, and that's how you find great stuff. And like the best happy accident, one of them, there's so many, but one of the great happy accidents was you and Sharon. In the script, a writer accidentally wrote, instead of my boots, me boots. And stop me if I'm wrong, but you read that and you're like, oh, she's British.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's some sort of accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I read the script and I was just going to do my regular voice, because this was during a time where I was insecure about how many voices I could come up with. But then I read that little mistake, and I was like, let me just try to put a little British-ish sounding accent on it. And that was like maybe a minute before we read the script on the the table read. And everyone liked it, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll stick with this. Yeah, it was fun.
I would love to ask all of you, and Drew, you as included, who was your favorite character that you played, if you have one? I know it's sometimes difficult to pick one, but...
Go, Nikki.
Oh.
Go, Nikki. Go, Nikki.
I mean, goodness, I love Sharon. She was probably my biggest character on the show. But my goodness, T. Winkle and his psychopathic tendencies. Just the creepiest little creature. I think I could do that character and find new ways to just be funny with that. I don't know. It was just a joy to do that character with Sarah.
So fun.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that when that Wee Tinkle and T. Winkle were working, that you would get up out of chairs and just either watch monitors or just go watch them, because it was like, look at it, it's so cute.
They're so funny. And their little hands and their creepy little eyes. There's just something off about those two characters, which I loved. Yeah.
I loved doing the Kraken.
Yeah.
We were, Nikki and James and I were the Kraken that came out of the wall for Colleen's Carney Gnome. And it was silly because it was like really fast. And we were back there just having a blast. But that was super fun. My favorite, come on. Gertie.
Yeah.
Gertie, the head of the
Forbes, General
with
Gertie.
her little...
Helen the goat.
Helen the goat. Oh,
yeah.
They give me these puppets. Like you go, oh, people are going to love this puppet. So how fun was that? And that was also I went in for the voice thing with Drew and Mike, and Mike's like, what does the voice sound like? So I did the voice I thought she would sound like, and he literally said, can you do more Regis Philbin? And I was like, I love that note. Yes, I can. And so when I listened to her, I just go, yeah, she's got that. Hey, I want to see. Hey. I was like, she's so cute. And then that face that you could scooch down.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved, and the King of Nordonica, because I just never saw it coming.
Mm-hmm. So good. Yeah, Mike's such a phenomenal director. He's not here so we can talk about him. Yeah, he made so many great calls on that show, just in terms of really shaping it and shaping performances and even shaping the music. Like, he would send full tracks back, and to the chagrin of our musicians, but. We talked to them recently, and they're like, he made all the right calls. Like, he was right. But, yeah, he's awesome.
Did you have a favorite character?
What? Oh, the question. Yeah. Evan. I'm going to miss that guy. Because he's so unfailingly peppy and positive, and all sorts of stuff can happen to him, and he just, waltzes along merrily on his way.
What's so great, too, is you mentioned about Colleen being a leader, but the bleed over was Colleen became our Brendar. Socially, she was the leader. Hey, this is what we're doing on Saturday. Cool, that's what we're doing. And it was great. It was like, thank you. And Drew was our Evan. Really long days. We would shoot really long days. And there was Drew, and there was Evan, and just everything was going to be fine, and it was. And it was like, yes, I will follow Drew and Colleen, Brendar, and Evan on any quest they send me on. I will just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Now, you, Nikki and Peggy, and Drew as well, of course, you're all brilliant improvisers, and I'm lucky to get to improvise with you. Was there improv on the set, or was it all pretty much strictly scripted?
We were lucky enough that Mike would let us do, like buttons on things. He was like, get out there. One of my favorite was with Drew, was Linda and Michael after, spoiler alert, Skelly gets hit with a boulder and he's lying there disassembled. And it was late and I had nothing. And he's like, just talk. And Skelly says, how do I look? And I just said, I had nothing. And I went, well, you could still talk. Because he could still, and Drew goes, so you're better than a rock. And I was like, there it is, there it is.
Set him up and knock him down.
Yeah, and I thought, thank you, because I thought I have nothing funny to say, so I'm just going to say what I say. It made me so happy, and when I see it in the cut, I just go,
There's so much goofiness, and they were. Our writers did a great job.
Yeah.
Like I think the scripts stood on their own, and they're really pretty tight.
Yes.
With minimal deviations, but there's always the opportunity for playing around in the cracks, like because they don't know necessarily what you're looking at completely all of the time, and if there's something fun in the background, it's the school of upstaging. So
just like how James and I were told, okay, be skeletons in the background and play with the snow. That's pretty much all we were given. And so we were like, okay. And so what we did is I think Skelly was having a scene with another character.
And Michael, I
With
think.
Michael, yeah. And oh my goodness, James and I would just be in the background being absolutely ridiculous, throwing snowballs at each other, laughing, and just... I remember he and I were in the back just crying from laughter, just of being so stupid and silly in the background and upstaging what was happening.
it was fabulous.
Yeah, so improv was able to happen with the lines and such, but also in the background, and we were just able to create our own funny little jokes there.
That sort of bonding and knowing, yes, the scripts were amazing, wonderful, great, tight, but also if you're shooting something and something goes a little awry, you knew not to just stop. It's like, oh, I'll comment on it or I'll incorporate it. And if it works, great, and if it doesn't, that's great too. But it wasn't like, shoot, now what happens? What do we do now? It's like, we roll with it. It's okay. Something gold could come out of it or nothing. It doesn't matter.
We had a pretty solid foundation with the scripts, but one thing that's really great about puppets is that after the fact, even after it's all shot, they're so forgiving of overdubbing and putting other lines and punchier jokes in. So we do a lot of that too. After something was shot and we needed a button and it wasn't quite there, then Mike would be like, let's do jokes for this, and so we'd send back and forth like, how do we punch this up? And anyway, so that happened too.
And Peggy, I think you alluded to this in the beginning, but I do want to touch on it because I think it's important. Is on a lot of puppet shows, puppeteers, you get to play a character, but I think you mentioned that on this show, you all played characters, but you were all also assisting and doing right hands and all that kind of stuff.
That was also what an incredible supportive family we became because. Again, there's only 8 of us, so it's like you'd line up. It's like Nikki was with Colleen, and you'd see Alan had Jenny, and James was on something, and I'd be like, Drew, you be my hands? And he's like, yeah, sure. It's like Drew, who is doing 112 things simultaneously, and I'm like, I need hands. It's like, I'm there. And I thought, how cool is that there he is, and then conversely, Peggy, I need you to come in, do this or that. And at one point in the final scene, he was helping Sharon, and then I had to hold Evan. And I have a picture on set of me holding Evan, so now I tell everyone I was Evan because I have documentation of that. And I think Drew's okay with that.
Yeah, fine. I did enough on the show.
But it was that, and truly, it could have. You could know a day ahead of time. Tomorrow you're going to be helping so and so. It could be in the moment. They do a setup. They go, okay, so because also people had to go off to record songs. Like if James had gone off as Kevin to record a song, you're down one, and it was like, wait, who does? Oh wait, James isn't here. Okay, Peggy, you're going in. That you did. There was no, I just loved it. It just felt so collaborative. And you'd come in and go, where am I? You're here, you're doing this, there's a thing. I was like, I feel so alive.
Well, in some of the shots, there's a shot in episode 6 or 7 with the gnome market, and because there were only 8 of us, and we didn't have enough manpower to do a whole sweeping tracking scene, unless we would do 2 puppets at once and run our butts off from one end of the stage to the other end of the stage, so that by the time the camera finishes its tracking, you're in frame. And that was...
We got shot 3 times. Like, so what happens is, like, you would roll in, as soon as you were out of frame, you dump those puppets, run, get those, then pop up, those would and then dump those, and then be in the final shot. So 6 you had... And we did it.
Yeah, so
we did it.
Keep in mind when you see that shot. Yeah, that is a. Did Mike even help on that? I think he did.
Mike
He did.
Mike, yeah.
It might be 9 people.
Might be.
Yeah.
We needed an extra couple.
But oh my gosh.
But that's only 9 people, and we're assisting each other and doing animals and kids running through, and it's madhouse. But it's
when
really
that
works.
when Mike and it was Paul directed that one, when Paul was like, yeah, okay, we got it. We were like, woo! We did that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because I asked Colleen the same question too, and maybe it's this scene, maybe it's something different, but and you can all individually answer this because you might have different answers. What was the most difficult piece of puppetry you did on the show? That one thing where you were finished, you were like, that was the hardest thing, but I nailed it.
Troll Queen. Troll Queen. She's heavy, and she's a wood body, so her body's unforgiving, the torso. And Sarah was doing my hands, and it was another shot that the Troll Queen was running through the kitchen, so she had like 5 spots she had to hit. They were trying to do a master shot, so she started at the sink, she went to Evan, she went to the fire, she chased Evan around the table, went back to the sink, and then went to her husband. And then supposed to grab something out of her husband's mouth. And there were monitors set up everywhere, and as soon as he yelled action, and it was just trying to remember where I was supposed to be, hold that thing up, make sure Sarah was, taken care of as well, because she's got to be in front of me. And truly, when I turn around to put my hand, when Sarah reaches out the hand to go into my husband's mouth, I'm supposed to yell, and I just this primal yell came out of me. It's like, I can't do this anymore, because I was like, okay, this is it. And then they went, we got it. It looked great. It was like, okay. Don't make me do it again. I think I had to do it one more time, but that was my
moment.
That was my moment.
Yeah.
I have 2 different ones. One was the dragon, because he, again, heavy, took, I had a backpack on to take most of the weight, but, vision was limited. I had to do a full performance. Peggy was on my hands, thank goodness. She did a great job of that. But yeah, just even extending that head around and swinging around, getting my eye focus right, smoke pouring out of his nostrils, water pouring out of his eyes, like that was he was a beast, literally and figuratively. It was a tricky one. That, and Evan climbing the spikes in the dungeon, one of the dungeon rooms we were in. That was really tricky, and I didn't actually even realize until I was completely done that I had done the entire thing left-handed, because I had to, because of the way he was positioned. And I had to be very gentle with the spikes, because they weren't actual spikes, they were
candles.
They were candles, yeah, so they would snap instantly if you put too much pressure on them. They look great though. But I did this whole thing where he's climbing these spikes and he's reaching up for a key to get out of the dungeon, and I was like, wow, God, that was really hard. My eye focus was nuts, and I looked down and I'm like, oh, he's on my left hand. Well, that explains it.
You're my hero.
It was one of those things where I did it instinctively, and then I couldn't figure out why it was so hard.
I can't think of a specific moment that was hardest for me, but I think it was always nerve-wracking when Brendar had a fight with her sword or fight with axe, because in my head I'm just like, don't hit Colleen in the face, don't hit Colleen in the face, and because I had to whack and like move this around and fight with a character, and I was so terrified too because the sword had spikes on it, like where the alligator face is, and so I was terrified of hitting her in the face with those spikes, but everything was okay. And then she was like, let's go forward, let's move, let's keep going. And yeah, it was hard, but I think it looked great. Yeah.
Amazing.
I actually did the 3D sculpts for the swords or a bunch of them. And Brendar's sword in particular, and I really designed it for looks and not for safety, which we found out. By the way, the pilot was shot in Los Angeles, which was so great. I loved Vancouver. I would love to have stayed here.
Well, what was remarkable too, I think, is when we got to Vancouver, our crew had not really shot puppets before.
Yeah.
So there was a learning curve for them. And as soon as they figured it out, and you would see them setting cameras, they would come in and put their hand up to set. It was glorious to behold. And our last day of shooting, our camera B guy had to go, and we got a new camera B operator who had never worked with puppets before. And I remember I went up in frame, and I'm looking down at monitors, and he's talking to me, going, "Okay, so I'm gonna need you to move your eye focus," and I'm like, okay, so I'm looking up at him, and he's like looking at me like I'm an actor, and I'm going, no, you have to tell me on the frame. We're on the frame. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh dear. He's like, and I was like, you're going to hear that a lot. We need to know we're in frame, so I'm going to start moving my puppet, and you tell me. And he's like, oh. I go, because these eyes, what we always have to,
yeah,
those eyes on the puppet, they don't see. And he's, oh.
Yeah, but what made it great is we started here shooting the pilot with Charles Pappert and Gary Corden, and they were from Crank Anchors. So they knew, like Gary knew exactly how high to build the set already, and there was no learning curve because they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. But yeah, they learned quick.
Yeah.
Everybody in Canada did a fantastic job.
Awesome. Well, Peggy Etra, Nicolette Santino, and Drew Massey, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about The Barbarian and the Troll.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Fun.
Thank you, Grant.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a great show. I listen to every episode.
Thanks, Drew.
And can I just add that if you have yet to see Barbarian and the Troll, it will be streaming on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, streaming on Paramount Plus in 2022. So
Oh yeah.
look for it, and please watch it and tell all your friends to watch it, because it'll help maybe get another season or get another show like it.
My thanks to Drew Massey, Peggy Etra, and Nicolette Santino for taking the time to be on this episode. For links to their social media accounts, as well as to some of the things we talked about, check out the show notes for this episode number 65, over at underthepuppet.com. Now it's time to announce the winner of episode 64's giveaway for a $100 gift card to projectpuppet.com, courtesy of Under the Puppet and projectpuppet.com. The question was, who was the creator of the Aniform puppet? And the answer was Maury Bunnan. And the winner is Tom Stewart. Congratulations, Tom. Your $100 digital gift card to projectpuppet.com is on the way. I would like to take a moment to say thank you to projectpuppet.com for donating half of the gift card amount for this giveaway. ProjectPuppet.com offers DIY puppet patterns, hard-to-find puppet building supplies, and custom puppet design and construction services. Please visit ProjectPuppet.com and tell them Under the Puppet sent you. You know, the ProjectPuppet.com gift card giveaway was so popular, I'm going to do it again. This time, the giveaway is for a $50 digital gift card to ProjectPuppet.com. To be entered to win, simply answer this question from the episode you just heard. How long did it take Drew Massey and Mike Mitchell to develop The Barbarian and the Troll before they began pitching it? When you find the answer, send it in an email to underthepuppet@gmail.com with the subject line giveaway, and you'll be entered to win. All entries for this giveaway must be received by November 15th, 2021. The winner will be chosen at random from all correct entries and be announced on the December 1st, 2021 episode of the show. 1 entry per household. Good luck. I want to send out a special thank you to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who help make this show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout out are Vicky Sebring, David Akers, Tony Urbano, Kathy Crawford, Eve Cunning, and my great aunt, Dorothy Pachoco. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. And thank you for your support. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. If you have questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, call our voicemail line at 818-806-9604. Or click the Call the Show button in the free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android. You can also send comments via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram or Twitter by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. Thank you so much for listening. This episode of Under the Puppet was edited by Steven Staver and features music by Dan Ring. Under the Puppet is a production of Saturday Morning Media and is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons. Become a patron today at patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. And help spread the word by sharing your favorite Under the Puppet episode with a friend. Under the Puppet is copyright 2021 Saturday Morning Media Grant Pachoco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. Under the Puppet proudly presents The Adventures of Timmy the Tooth Reunion. In this almost 90-minute video, you will hear great stories from the cast and crew who brought this amazing puppet show to life. Plus, you'll see never-before-seen artwork and exclusive behind-the-scenes video. Under the Puppet's Timmy the Tooth Reunion is available right now at timmy.underthepuppet.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.